The Night Shift. Welcome to death row, where the condemned aren't the only ones dying. Pull up a chair, pour yourself something strong, and let me tell you about the night I learned that resurrection isn't just for messiahs and mall zombies. My name is Jack Turner, and this is how I discovered that the afterlife has better Wi-Fi than most coffee shops. Chapter 1. The Man in the Box. The first rule of dying is, you don't talk about dying. The second rule is, everybody's doing it, just at different speeds. I'm Jack Turner, 44 years old, 18 years deep in the Navy SEALs before they spit me out like a bad oyster. Now I'm a professional corpse cosmetologist at my Uncle Raymond's funeral home. My wife Melissa, a former swimsuit model who aged like a fine wine in a burning warehouse, always wanted more from life than what a government paycheck could buy. Guess that's why she started shopping in other stores, specifically the smooth-talking asshole named Daniel Stone who became our new funeral director. Funny how life works. I spent years putting people in the ground overseas. Now I was about to get a taste of my own medicine. 1. Mrs. Henderson's 80-year-old corpse lay before me like yesterday's newspaper, wrinkled, forgotten, and about to be recycled into something more palatable. I worked the foundation into her sunken cheeks with the same precision I once used to wire C4 under a bridge outside Mosul. Same hands that used to piece together what was left of my squad after their Humvee kissed an IED. Same steady movements, different kind of reconstruction. The dead don't judge. They don't ask questions. They just lie there and let you make them beautiful again. Never thought you'd take to this business like a duck to formaldehyde. Uncle Raymond's voice bulldozed through my concentration. His bulky frame filled the doorway like a bear trying on a tuxedo. At 67, Raymond was still built like a linebacker who discovered the joys of bourbon and bacon. Years of pickling had turned his liver into something that could probably survive nuclear winter. 18 years with the SEALs teaches you respect for the body, I said, not looking up from my work. Dead or alive, everyone deserves their dignity. What I didn't tell him was that I'd learned this particular skill in the Hindu Kush, 2005. We got pinned down and Rodriguez took a sniper round to the face. No evac possible, no way to leave him behind. I carried what was left of him for 4 days through goat paths and Taliban checkpoints. By day 3, the smell was attracting the wrong kind of attention. Found an old Soviet field hospital, abandoned but for the ghosts and some medical supplies. I did what I had to do. Got Rodriguez home to his mother with his face intact. Raymond didn't need that story. Nobody did. You've got the touch, he nodded approvingly. The families appreciate it. That matters in this business. I nodded, continuing my work. 5 months since my discharge, 5 months of sleepless nights and cold sweats. 5 months of feeling like a shark in a kiddie pool, all teeth and nowhere to swim. The funeral home was supposed to be temporary, a place to catch my breath. Instead, it became my life raft. Here, I could still serve a purpose, still bring order to chaos, maybe even find some peace among the pieces. Listen, wanted to give you a heads up. Raymond shifted his weight, cleared his throat like a guilty politician. Hired a new funeral director. Guy with connections and that California shine. Daniel Stone worked for some boutique mortuary out in Malibu. Think he can help us tap into the Silver Ridge market. You know, those trust fund corpses who want to be buried in Armani. I kept nodding. Uncle Ray was always chasing the next dollar, me. I'd seen enough of what money could buy, mostly bullets and body bags, but the man gave me work when I needed it. Loyalty is loyalty, even when it smells like embalming fluid. He starts tomorrow, you'll like him, sharp as a scalpel. He left me alone with Mrs. Henderson. Just me and the only person in the room who understood the value of silence. 2. Daniel Stone arrived the next morning like a shark in a 3-piece suit. Black Mercedes S-Class, windows tinted darker than my combat memories. He stepped out looking like he'd been assembled by a team of image consultants. 40 years old, navy suit sharp enough to perform surgery, hair styled by someone who probably charged more than I made in a week. His smile had been focus grouped for maximum impact. I watched from the supply closet, nursing my coffee black, 2 sugars, old habits from when sugar was the only luxury in a forward operating base. First thing I noticed, his eyes. They swept the room like a sniper checking for targets, cataloging exits, assets, and obstacles in one smooth pass. I'd done the same thing entering hot zones. He was hunting, just a different kind of prey. Then he spotted Raymond and transformed. Shoulders dropped a fraction, posture softened, voice modulated down half an octave. The man was a chameleon in Armani. Interesting. Mr. Wilson, Daniel's handshake probably came with a warranty. Such a pleasure to finally meet in person. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. Note the word choice, not job or position, opportunity, like we were offering him a lottery ticket, not a paycheck. And this must be your nephew. Raymond waved me over like a proud parent at show and tell. Jack, come meet Daniel. I approached with deliberate slowness. Years of special ops taught me that hurrying shows weakness, and weakness attracts predators. Our new director looked like he ate weakness for breakfast. Jack Turner, I offered my hand, gripped just north of uncomfortable. Daniel Stone, he matched the pressure, and I filed that away for later analysis. Military. 18 years, SEALs, I kept it short. His eyes widened genuine surprise before the mask slipped back on. Honored to meet you. I'm just a civilian, but I've always admired men like you, real heroes. His voice shifted again, respect mixed with caution now. Another quick transformation, adapting to the new data. Professional manipulator, this one. Nothing heroic about war, I said flatly. Just a job. Like ours, right? He smiled. We both deal with the aftermath of tragedy, just trying to help people say goodbye with dignity. I let the silence stretch. Raymond looked pleased, like he'd successfully introduced 2 prize bulls without a fight. Over the next 40 minutes, Daniel pitched his vision like a Silicon Valley evangelist selling digital snake oil. He talked about premium service expansion, high net worth client acquisition, and revenue stream diversification. His main target, Silver Ridge, the gated community where millionaires went to die expensively. They want exclusivity, Daniel paced the break room like a caged motivational speaker. These aren't your average stiffs. They want to be planted in style, separate from the common clay. It's our golden ticket. Raymond looked like a kid watching fireworks for the first time. And you think we can land that contract? He asked. More than think, Daniel's smile could have sold ice to Eskimos. I've already got a meeting set up with the first family, some tech mogul who's circling the drain. If we nail this funeral, the contract's ours. Circling the drain, charming, but something felt off. How do you schedule a meeting for a funeral that hasn't happened yet? My instincts, sharpened by years of spotting IEDs and ambushes, were pinging like a metal detector in a junkyard. Daniel Stone was running a game, and I didn't know the rules yet. But I knew how to gather intel. Watch, wait, and catalog every tell. It's what kept me alive in places where the wrong shadow could mean a shallow grave. Time to see what our shark in sheep's clothing was really hunting. 3. Melissa never cared about my work. 18 years of marriage, and she never once asked what it felt like to spend 40 hours in an ambush position, pissing in a bottle and living on energy bars. Never wondered about the weight of a sniper rifle or the smell of cordite mixed with desert dust. The scars on my body were just inconvenient speed bumps in our increasingly rare intimate moments. So when she suddenly developed an interest in the funeral business, my radar lit up like Baghdad during shock and awe. Thought I'd bring you lunch, honey. She materialized in the doorway with a Tupperware container, dressed like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of wherever the hell. She looked good. She always looked good. That was the problem. Melissa treated aging like a military campaign, and she was winning every battle. Same tight figure, same salon-perfect hair, same designer everything. Meanwhile, I felt like a relic from a war nobody wanted to remember. Thanks, leave it in the break room fridge. I'll grab it later. I didn't look up from my paperwork. She didn't move. Aren't you going to show me around? I've never seen the working part of the mortuary. You really want to see the prep room? I raised an eyebrow. Mr. Patterson's in there with a perforated ulcer. Not exactly dinner conversation. Oh, she deflated slightly. What about the rest? I set down my pen. In 18 years of marriage, Melissa had shown less interest in my daily life than most people show in their dental hygienist's vacation photos. Now she wanted the grand tour. What's going on, Melissa? In all our years together, you've never been curious about where I spend my days. Suddenly, you're Mother Teresa of the mortuary. She shifted into defensive mode, subtle head tilt, pursed lips, narrowed eyes. I knew these signals better than my combat hand signs. Just trying to show interest in your new career. Sorry for caring. The sarcasm dripped like honey from a razor blade. She spun on her designer heels and stormed out, leaving the Tupperware on my desk like a peace offering from a war she'd already decided to lose. I sighed. Marriage was like a long-range reconnaissance mission. The longer you stayed in position, the more likely you were to be compromised. The pattern continued. 3 times that week, Melissa appeared with food I never ate, questions I didn't answer, and increasingly transparent excuses. Twice, I saw her leaving Daniel's office with slightly mussed hair and flushed cheeks that had nothing to do with exertion. At home, she started mentioning our new funeral director, with the frequency of a teenage crush. Daniel says the funeral industry is experiencing a paradigm shift, she announced over dinner, moving salad around her plate like chess pieces. New technologies, sustainable practices, personalization options. Did you know they're developing biodegradable caskets with built-in memorial trees? I chewed my steak methodically, nodding the new perfume more expensive than what I'd bought her for our anniversary. The silk scarf around her neck, despite the warm evening. Classic concealment technique. We seem to be having a lot of conversations with Daniel, I observed, keeping my tone Switzerland neutral. Well, he's just so passionate about the business, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Says that with Silver Ridge contract, everything will change. Imagine the opportunities. Money, opportunities. The stuff Melissa always felt she'd been cheated out of by marrying a government grunt with a death wish and a pension. I stayed quiet. Years of interrogation training taught me that silence was often more effective than questions. People hate conversational vacuums. They'll fill them with the truth if you wait long enough. But I didn't need a confession. The evidence was written in her body language, her sudden interests, and the way she now said Daniel like it was a prayer to a God who actually answered. My wife was having an affair with our funeral director. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd survived 3 wars only to have my marriage die in a mortuary. Time to gather more intel. In special ops, we called it pattern of life analysis, watching, documenting, building a complete picture before making a move. And I was very good at my job. 4. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present the future of eternal rest, the exclusive Serenity 3000. Daniel stood beside a casket that looked like Apple had decided to get into the death business. Polished composite materials, internal LED mood lighting, and enough tech to launch a small satellite. We'd all been summoned to the showroom, Raymond nervous but excited, Martha the accountant squinting suspiciously, 2 young assistants gawking like kids at a magic show. This masterpiece of mortuary innovation features biometric locks that respond only to authorized personnel, climate control for optimal preservation, and military-grade soundproofing. He caressed the surface like a game show host fondling a new car. Complete acoustic isolation, essential for our privacy-conscious VIP clients who value discretion even in death. Not a whisper in, not a whisper out. Or screams, I thought. Perfect soundproofing works both ways. Interior features premium upholstery with our patented memory cloud technology that molds to the body's contours. Like floating on air, if air cost 20 grand. He popped the lid with theatrical flair, revealing an interior that looked more comfortable than my apartment. Jack, would you mind helping with the demonstration? Your military bearing would be perfect to showcase the ergonomics. Show the Silver Ridge clients how even a genuine war hero fits comfortably. Several uncomfortable chuckles. Raymond nodded encouragingly, his do-it-for-the-business expression in full effect. Sure, I shrugged and approached the casket. The interior was surprisingly pleasant. The fabric adjusted to my weight like those fancy tactical sleeping systems we tested, but never got approved for field use. I lay there, staring up at curious faces hovering over the open casket. The situation was absurd enough to be almost funny. "How's it feel?" Daniel asked. "More comfortable than some forward operating bases I've slept in," I admitted. "Perfect," Daniel beamed. "Now let's demonstrate the automatic closure and biometric security." I climbed out, brushing off my clothes. Daniel touched the side panel sensor. The lid glided shut with a pneumatic whisper. "System armed," he announced. "Now only authorized fingerprints or the emergency override code can open it. We'll program access for all staff naturally." He swiped his finger across the scanner. The lid opened smoothly. "This is revolutionizing the death care industry, people," he concluded. "We'll be the first in the region offering this exclusive service. Imagine the impression on our first Silver Ridge client." After the demo, as everyone dispersed, I lingered, studying the casket. Something about it bothered me beyond the obvious pretension. Maybe it was the soldier's instinct. Any box that can be locked can become a cage. I leaned in, examining the control panel. Complex system for a corpse container. Biometric locks belonged on weapons lockers and classified servers, not coffins. Something wasn't adding up. Like a sniper scope that's slightly off, you might not notice until you squeeze the trigger and miss by a mile. 5. Everything changed the evening. I found Melissa's forgotten phone. We were closing up shop. I went to the break room for my jacket and spotted the familiar pink flamingo case on the table. Melissa had been in earlier with another lunch delivery I'd never eat. The phone buzzed, screen lit up. Message preview from DS appeared on the lock screen. "Meeting tonight at 10 p.m. at mortuary. Don't be late. Need to discuss tomorrow's delivery. Our chance." My gut clenched. Years of pattern recognition screamed that this was more than adultery. I'd memorized her passcode years ago, her pageant victory date, because of course it was. I unlocked the phone. The message thread with Daniel was a goldmine of incrimination. Texts, photos, the predictable digital trail of an affair. But buried in the flirtation were references to a special order and golden opportunity connected to Silver Ridge millionaires. "This job solves all our money problems," Daniel had written. "We can start fresh, together." "What about Jay?" Melissa had asked. "He won't even notice you're gone. Guys like him are too lost in their war stories to see real life." "Jay, that's me, Jack, the expendable variable in their equation." I carefully placed the phone back where I'd found it. The hollow feeling wasn't jealousy or rage, more like confirmation. Like when you finally spot the sniper's nest you've been sensing all day. Our marriage had been a casualty for years. Now I had official confirmation of death. But questions remained. What special order? How did their affair connect to a millionaire's funeral? Why meet at a locked mortuary at 10 p.m.? I decided to conduct surveillance, basic recon. I needed intel on whatever scheme they were running that could threaten Raymond's business. I drove home, changed into dark clothes, waited for Melissa to announce she was visiting her sister, then followed at a safe distance. Predictably, she headed straight to the mortuary. I didn't take my phone, left it at home like we'd been trained. Modern smartphones are just voluntary tracking devices, and I didn't need digital breadcrumbs leading back to me. The plan was simple: infiltrate through the rear entrance. I had keys. Observe without detection, gather intelligence, exfiltrate clean. Basic reconnaissance. Nothing I hadn't done 100 times in hostile territory. I should have known that the most dangerous operations are the ones closest to home. 6. The funeral home transformed after dark from a place of reverent farewell to something from a budget horror film. Shadows turned flower arrangements into hunched figures. Ambient lighting became an interrogation lamp. Death's presence felt more honest without the daytime facade of dignity. I slipped through the rear door using my keys. Inside felt like infiltrating an enemy compound. Same heightened senses, same careful breathing, same muscle memory guiding each step. Years of training made silence automatic. I approached the main viewing room where we'd done the casket demonstration. Light leaked under the door. Voices carried Daniel and Melissa, no longer pretending. "Are you sure this will work?" Melissa's voice, excited and nervous in equal measure. "Absolutely," Daniel's confident purr. "My contact with the widow is solid. She'll pay $500,000 cash if we swap the caskets. $500,000 for one night's work." "But why does she want a different casket?" "Who cares?" Daniel laughed. "Something about her husband's will requiring specific burial conditions. Rich people and their fucking mind games. Point is, she wants the Serenity 3000 instead of the torture device her husband specified." I crept closer, using the doorframe for concealment. They stood by the demonstration casket. Daniel had his arm around Melissa's waist. Her head rested on his shoulder. The portrait of a couple planning their future on the bones of betrayal. "When we get the money," Daniel continued, stroking her hair, "we vanish. Costa Rica, Bali, pick any beach where your husband will never find us." "What about Raymond?" Melissa asked. "Screw him. He'll blame me for stealing the money, throw a tantrum, curse my name. By the time he figures out you're gone too, we'll be sipping mojitos under fake names." He leaned down and kissed her. She responded with enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. "What about Jack?" she asked, pulling back. "He's not the type to let things go." Daniel smirked. "Jack's too busy living in his war-torn past to notice the present. Guys like him can't adjust to civilian life. He'll probably be relieved you're gone, more time to polish his medals and bore people with combat stories." I felt the sting, not of jealousy but of truth. Maybe he was right. Maybe I never really came home from the desert. Melissa sighed with a bitterness I'd never heard before. "You know, sometimes I felt like a war widow even before he deployed. Each tour took another piece of him. By the end, I was married to a ghost who happened to have a pulse." Her words carried genuine pain beneath the betrayal. Maybe I wasn't the only casualty of my service. I shifted position for a better view and knocked over a flower vase. It toppled forward, shattering on the floor with the subtlety of a flashbang. "What was that?" Daniel tensed. The surprise triggered my combat reflexes. I quickly scanned for exits. Main door blocked by them. Service corridor behind me led to loading dock. Side door opened to prep room. Multiple escape routes, but all required exposure. "Someone's here," Melissa gasped. Their footsteps approached. I had seconds to decide. The only hiding spot available was the Serenity 3000, lid invitingly open like a high-tech mouth waiting to swallow secrets. Instinct overrode logic. I slipped inside and pulled the lid down, leaving a tiny gap for observation. Daniel and Melissa rushed into the showroom, looking around wildly. "Nobody here," Daniel said, turning off the security alarm with practiced ease. "Probably whined through a vent. These old buildings have more drafts than a sports bar." "I swear I heard something," Melissa pressed against him, like someone was watching us. You're paranoid, too much stress. Daniel scanned the room once more. Your husband's probably home watching war documentaries and feeling sorry for himself. Stop worrying. They returned to the viewing room. I prepared to exit once they were distracted, but then Daniel spoke about the casket. Speaking of which, let's secure this beauty. He patted the Serenity 3000's lid, my hiding spot. Tomorrow, we load it onto the hearse for Silver Ridge. Can't have dust compromising our profit margin. My heart stopped. I positioned myself to spring out but reacted too slowly. The lid closed with a soft pneumatic hiss, triggering the biometric lock. I pressed against the lid from inside, solid as a bank vault. The state-of-the-art soundproofing Daniel had bragged about worked perfectly. My shouts might as well have been whispers to the dead. I pounded the lid, creating vibrations I hoped they'd notice. Useless. They were already leaving, voices fatting as they walked away. See you tomorrow at 9, Daniel said. Big day ahead. I tried operating the interior emergency panel in the dark. No response. Pushed every surface that might hide a release. Nothing. Attempted various access codes on what felt like a keypad. All failed. Understanding hit like a sucker punch. Tomorrow this casket, with me inside, would travel to Silver Ridge for a millionaire's funeral. The trap had sprung. The hunter had become the hunted, and my high-tech cage was about to become very mobile. Chapter 2. In the Millionaire's Court. Life has a sense of humor darker than my old combat gear. I defused bombs that could level city blocks, extracted hostages from compounds designed by paranoid warlords, and infiltrated facilities that Google Earth pretends don't exist. But give me one luxury casket with German engineering, and suddenly I'm the star of my own buried-alive nightmare. The universe's punchline was still developing, though. My imprisonment was about to become a road trip. 1. The mortuary's morning routine started early. Footsteps above woke me from restless half-sleep. I heard the back door opening, multiple voices entering. The Serenity 3000 lived up to its premium soundproofing. Everything outside reached me muffled and distant, like listening through water. Easy with that corner, Billy, Daniel's irritated voice cut through. This is hand-polished by German craftsmen, not your beat-up pickup. Sorry, Mr. Stone, mumbled an unfamiliar voice, apparently Billy. I felt the casket tilt as they began loading me into the hearse. My hands involuntarily clenched. The journey was beginning. Help, I roared with every ounce of air my trained lungs could muster. Help, I'm in here. Worthless. The soundproofing turned my screams into whispers the dead couldn't hear. I could detonate a grenade inside, and they'd probably only notice a slight vibration. Ready to go, Billy said. This thing's heavier than standard models. Of course it is, Daniel scoffed. It's German engineering. 2 men should handle it easily. The hearse engine started. I was now cargo, heading to an unknown destination. In total darkness, I activated my internal clock, a skill drilled into every special operator. 15 seconds to assess situation and resources, no more. Situation, trapped in an airtight container. No external communication. Heading to a millionaire's funeral. Minimal chance of self-rescue. Resources, clothing, folding knife, my everyday carry Microtech OTF, never left home without it. Luminous watch dial, empty pockets. I systematically explored the casket's interior with my blade. My fingers found a ridged panel near the head, felt like a small grate. I worked the knife's edge around it, feeling the section give slightly. Ventilation system. Working carefully, I enlarged the opening. Cool air trickled through, bringing blessed oxygen. Small victory. Next, I created an observation port. I delicately cut through the lining fabric near my head, making a tiny hole, enough to see a strip of light but invisible from outside. Through this improvised periscope, I glimpsed the hearse ceiling and occasionally, tree tops rolling past. I caught myself appreciating the irony. The operator who'd survived the world's most dangerous places was now riding to his own funeral, watching the world through a hole in a coffin. My squad mates would never let me live this down, assuming I lived at all. 2. The hearse slowed and stopped. Through my peephole, I first saw ornate wrought iron gates with gilded initials, CW, then caught glimpses of a mansion that made the White House look like public housing. "Welcome to the Winters estate, Mr. Stone," announced a voice dripping with British refinement. "Thank you, Hutchins," Daniel replied with artificial warmth. "We've brought the casket for Mrs. Winters as arranged." "Follow me, sir. The family has assembled in the main hall for viewing." They lifted me from the hearse and carried me inside. Through my observation slit, I watched crystal chandeliers pass like expensive stars, antique furniture that belonged in museums, and ceiling moldings that probably cost more than my military pension. When they set the casket down, I heard the buzz of conversation, at least a dozen people, all speaking in the hushed tones of obligatory grief rather than genuine sorrow. "This is absolutely outrageous," declared a sharp male voice. "I've been his attorney for 30 years, and what do I get? Cufflinks and a painting that's probably fake." "Shut up, Howard," replied a woman's voice, low and cigarette rough. "You whine too much. At least you didn't have to sleep with him twice." They moved the casket again, positioning me center stage. Voices grew louder. "So this is father's choice," said a younger male voice. "Leave it to Charles to insist on the most advanced casket money can buy." "It's the latest model from Eternal Rest," Daniel interjected professionally. "Mr. Winters selected it personally before his passing." "Typical," snorted a young woman. "Even dead, Dad needs the newest toys." "But this is degrading," exploded another voice, presumably one of the sons. "Locking her in the crypt overnight with father's corpse, even for Charles, this is too much." Silence fell before a commanding female voice cut through. "If Vivian wants her millions, she can endure one night. We endured his eccentricities for decades." The puzzle pieces clicked. Charles Winters, the eccentric millionaire, had apparently left a bizarre codicil in his will. His young widow must spend the night locked in the family crypt beside his body to inherit, in a second casket. The situation was becoming clearer, and significantly worse. 3. They moved the casket again. The acoustics changed, suggesting a smaller, cooler space. A door closed, and I heard approaching footsteps light with the distinctive click of expensive heels. "Is this the casket?" A woman's voice, soft and melodic, nothing like Melissa's sharp tones. "Yes, Mrs. Winters," Daniel confirmed. "The Serenity 3000, latest model. Climate control, automatic closure, perfect soundproofing." So this was Vivian, the young widow who'd inherit millions if she survived a night with her dead husband. "May I look inside?" she asked. I tensed. This was it. They'd open the lid and find me instead of a corpse. "Unfortunately, no." Daniel's smooth voice carried professional regret. "The casket was sealed per Mr. Winters' specific instructions. He wanted it opened only during the formal ceremony. You'll enter your own casket later in the crypt." "I understand," Vivian sighed. "Charles always controlled every detail, even his own funeral." She moved closer. I heard fabric rustling. "Mr. Stone, I need to discuss a delicate matter." Her voice dropped lower. "You know about my husband's peculiar requirement." "Yes, Mrs. Winters. You must spend the night in the family crypt in a second casket beside your late husband." "Exactly. But the casket Charles chose for me is ancient, cramped, with a wooden headrest. It's torture. Charles knew I was claustrophobic. He probably expected me to break." I heard her packing nervously. "You see, I'm willing to fulfill his final wishes, truly, but not in that medieval torture device. I won't survive the night." "I understand your concerns," Daniel sympathized. That's why you contacted me." A pause, and I almost felt her moving closer to Daniel. "Yes, precisely." Her voice became a purr. "You've brought 2 caskets, one for Charles, this magnificent specimen, and a demonstration model identical for the family viewing." "Yes, but what if," she paused dramatically, "we switched the torture chamber Charles intended for me with your comfortable demonstration model? No one would notice. They all think I'll suffer, but I'll spend the night in relative comfort." I practically heard the gears spinning in Daniel's head. "Mrs. Winters, you know we already discussed the price over the phone." $500,000, she finished. "Cash today." I lay there, stunned. Daniel was running a triple con, selling the family a casket for the millionaire, switching the widow's assigned casket for the demo model, and pocketing $500,000 in the process. One question remained: what happened when I finally escaped? 4. Once Vivian left, I redoubled my escape efforts. Military training covered hostage survival, but escaping from a luxury casket wasn't in the Fort Bragg curriculum. Feeling along the lid's interior, I discovered a small panel near the ventilation system. In darkness, it felt like Braille instructions. Practice reading Braille from one North Korean operation paid off. I made out several digits. An emergency unlock code 6 digits. Without light, reading the complete sequence was impossible. I began methodically testing combinations. 123,456, nothing, 0, silence. 111,111, no response. The door opened again. I recognized the voice immediately. "So everything ready, Melissa, my wife?" "Almost, baby," Daniel answered. "Vivian just left, agreed to the full $500K, cash." 500,000. Melissa's voice carried the reverence reserved for lottery tickets and miracle cures. "You're a genius, Danny." Danny, Christ. 18 years of marriage, and she'd never called me anything but Jack. Fabric rustled. I pictured them embracing. The sound of kissing confirmed my mental image. "Actually," Daniel's voice turned suggestive, "we have time before the ceremony. This casket's so sturdy we could." "No," I thought desperately. "Please, God, not on top of the casket where I'm trapped." But the universe, having established its twisted sense of humor, wasn't done with me. I felt the casket shake slightly as weight settled on top. The sounds that followed left nothing to imagination. This was a new circle of hell. Lying in complete darkness, buried alive, listening to my wife have sex with another man literally on top of my prison. I focused on the keypad. Under these circumstances, even PTSD seemed preferable. 654,321, nothing. 112,233, no result. When the gymnastics above finally ceased, I graduated to 999,999. Still nothing. "That was impressive," Melissa panted. "Wait till we're on our yacht," Daniel laughed. "Now let's go, ceremony starts soon." They left, and I continued cycling through combinations with the determination of a bomb tech on his last wire. This time, the bomb was me. 5. They moved the casket again. Acoustic changes suggested a large space with excellent sound dynamics. Voices multiplied at least 24 people now. The Winters family inheritance drama was reaching its climax. "Ladies and gentlemen," a deep voice announced, "must be the eldest son. Before the formal ceremony, I'll read the relevant sections of our father's will regarding today's ritual." Tense silence descended. "Section 17, he continued. "I, Charles Edmund Winters, being of sound mind and vindictive disposition, bequeath the majority of my estate, including my shares in Winters Industries, the Aspen Compound, Lake Como Villa and Classic Car Collection, to my 5th and final wife, Vivian Marie Winters, provided." He paused for effect. She spends one night in the family crypt in a casket placed beside my own, from sunset following the funeral ceremony until 9 a.m. the next morning. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Silence, the reader demanded. Should this condition not be met precisely, all assets designated for her will be divided equally among my children from previous marriages. We all know the terms, Jonathan, interrupted a cold female voice. No need for the fifth reading. Procedure requires it, Margaret, Jonathan replied stiffly, as does the presence of all heirs at the ceremony. Where's Eleanor? Here, here, slurred a female voice, just freshening up in the powder room. With gin by the smell, someone muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Shut it, Margaret, Eleanor snapped back. Not all of us spent 3 decades practicing how to be an ice sculpture. Some of us still have feelings. And some of us still drink until we can't feel, Margaret countered. Charles was right about you, always was. Ladies, please, interjected a younger female voice dripping sarcasm. Let's pretend this is a funeral, not a dynasty rerun. Andrea, don't start, Jonathan warned. What, dear brother, she responded. Isn't this what Daddy wanted? One last puppet show with him pulling strings from the grave. I almost heard her gesturing toward my temporary tomb. Andrea, several voices protested. Fine, sorry, she said insincerely. Where's the grieving widow anyway? Shouldn't she be the star of this circus? Vivian's preparing, Jonathan answered. This is a difficult ordeal for her. Oh, I'm sure she'll find the strength, Andrea drawled. Amazing what people endure when millions are at stake. Right then, Vivian entered. I could tell by the sudden silence followed by the whisper of expensive fabric and clicking heels. Forgive my lateness, she said in a trembling voice. I needed time to gather courage. Her acting impressed me, but years of interrogation experience made me fluent in the language of deception. Of course, dear, Jonathan's voice softened. We understand what you're facing. Thank you, Vivian sniffled. Charles was everything to me. I'm ready to honor his final wish, however unusual. Naturally, Margaret commented dryly, especially considering what's at stake. The ceremony will begin in an hour, Jonathan announced, ignoring the barb. Then the procession will descend to the family crypt, where you'll spend the night as required. I'm ready, Vivian replied with false bravery. At that moment, I realized I was trapped in something far stranger and more complex than a simple marital betrayal. I'd become an unwitting player in a millionaire's posthumous mind game, and judging by the family dynamics, the night was just beginning. Zix. Ready, I heard Daniel whisper. Most of the crowd had apparently left the hall. Yeah, boss, Billy replied. You sure nobody'll notice the switch? These rich pricks, Daniel chuckled. They won't even look at Vivian's casket. They're too busy hopping she'll crack so they can split the inheritance. I felt my casket being repositioned. They were preparing the switch. The old man's really in that one, Billy asked. Yeah, Daniel confirmed. Body was transferred this morning. He'll rest peacefully as corpses should. Peacefully seemed unlikely, I thought, planning my announcement once I escaped. And this other casket goes down for the widow. Right into the crypt. She pays $500K to avoid the torture box the old man specially ordered for her. Why'd she spend that much? She'll inherit over $300 million if she makes it through the night. Hell, I'd pay $500K to sleep in a comfy casket for those odds. They finished repositioning. I was developing a clear picture, 2 caskets, one containing the actual Charles Winters, the other mine, meant for Vivian. Their plan was to switch her assigned torture device for the luxury model. The ceremony resumed. Through my peephole, I watched robed clergy, heard prayers and remembrances. Standard wealthy funeral, lots of pomp, minimal genuine emotion. We now begin the procession to the family crypt, the minister announced solemnly. Please follow in orderly fashion." My temporary prison swayed as 6 pallbearers lifted me. We descended what felt like a spiral staircase. Temperature dropped, air grew damp, classic underground crypt environment. Voices echoed off stone walls, creating an eerie chorus. "Place the caskets on the platforms," Jonathan directed when we reached bottom. They set me down on something solid. Sounds indicated another casket being positioned nearby, presumably containing the actual corpse. The crypt filled with shuffling feet and hushed voices. "Ladies and gentlemen," the minister began, "we gather here to lay Charles Edmund Winters to rest. Family members may offer final words." Brief pause, then heavy footsteps approached. "Father," Jonathan began, his commanding voice slightly cracking, "you left a complicated legacy. Demanding, often ruthless, but ultimately fair. You taught me business has no room for sentiment, only results." He paused, controlling emotion. "When you turned 60 and doctors gave you a year to live, you told me you'd last 20 more years just to spite medical science. You made it 18, almost kept your promise, stubborn to the end." Strange mixture of annoyance and genuine respect colored his words. He stepped back, replaced by clicking heels. "Charles," came the hoarse female voice, slightly slurred, "you destroyed my life, you know that. Took my son, turned him against me. Eleanor's too emotional to raise a Winter's heir, remember telling the court. Now you're dead and I'm still here, still talking to you. Who won Charles?" She laughed bitterly. Then came a sound suspiciously like a flask being opened. "The sick thing is, I still love you, you old bastard, despite everything." Eleanor retreated, replaced by measured, precise footsteps. "Charles," Margaret's voice remained ice-cold and perfectly controlled. "You were an exceptional business partner and terrible husband. You built an empire and destroyed your family. You were a great man and a horrible human being." She paused. "Yet I'm grateful. You made me stronger. After our divorce, I built my own company and proved you wrong about me. Perhaps the only time the great Charles Winters miscalculated." Margaret withdrew. Next came light, almost dancing steps. "Hey, Dad," Andrea's voice sounded unexpectedly warm, minus her usual sarcasm. "Everyone thinks I hate you. Probably because I'm the only one who told you the truth to your face, told you what an asshole you were." Shocked gasps rippled through the crypt. "Oh, come on," Andrea snorted. "He would have laughed. Right, Dad, you always valued truth. That's why I loved you despite everything else. You were an insufferable, controlling, manipulative tyrant, but you never lied, and you always saw through everyone else's bullshit." She paused, and I imagined her turning toward the others. "That's why I believe his final wishes have deeper meaning than they appear." The last sentence carried obvious implication, and I almost felt her gaze landing on Vivian. Andrea departed. Silence fell, broken only by quiet sobbing, probably Vivian's theatrical tears. I used the moment to assess my position. So far, the ceremony proceeded as planned. Somewhere nearby stood my wife, who betrayed me with the funeral director while participating in this grotesque page show. I felt Daniel's nervous presence near the casket. He kept tapping the lid quietly, but I heard it. The situation was far from ideal. 7. "We conclude the ceremony," the minister announced after all had spoken. "May Charles find eternal peace, and may his body return to the earth from whence it came." He offered a brief prayer I barely heard over my own heartbeat. Time was running out. Soon they'd lock me in the crypt with Vivian for the entire night. "Everyone please proceed upstairs," Jonathan ordered. "Vivian will remain to fulfill our father's final request." General movement, shuffling feet, whispers, footsteps ascending stone stairs. Once most had left, I heard Jonathan address Vivian. "Remember, the crypt doors open precisely 24 hours from now. The timer starts when we seal the doors. You must remain here all night or forfeit everything." "I understand," Vivian replied quietly. There's an intercom system if needed, Jonathan continued. You can contact us in emergencies. What qualifies as an emergency? Vivian asked with trembling voice. Like if I have a panic attack. Then you'll receive help, Jonathan answered evenly, and lose the inheritance. The will is explicit. Any violation means you get the standard widow's portion, 7%, and the rest gets divided among us. Your choice, your nerves or father's fortune. With that, he turned and left. I heard the heavy crypt door close with a resonant clang, then silence. For several seconds, Vivian didn't move. Then came rapid footsteps followed by a deep, relieved sigh. Finally, she said in a completely different voice, confident and businesslike. God, I'm sick of fake crying. All that sobbing makes my eyes itch. I heard rustling fabric, probably removing her mourning veil. Then a purse opening and the clink of glass. Time to celebrate, Vivian declared. 12 more hours in this tomb and I'm richer by 300 million, worth a toast. A cork popped, liquid poured. The grieving widow had brought champagne to her husband's crypt. Classy. Now for entertainment, she said to herself. Long night ahead. I heard her retrieve something else sounded electronic. The familiar chime of a video call followed. Mark, it's me, Vivian said. Yes, already in the crypt. Everything's going perfectly. These idiots actually locked me in. Can you believe it? She laughed. By the way, the funeral director did as requested. Swapped my casket for the luxury model. Charles would lose his mind knowing I'll spend the night in comfort instead of the torture device he planned. Pause while her caller responded. Yes, for 500K. Chump change compared to what I'll inherit tomorrow. Did you confirm the exact amount? Another pause. 327 million. Seriously. The old man was even richer than I thought. I lay there, stunned by this woman's cynicism. She discussed her recently deceased husband like he was an ATM that finally paid jackpot. First thing after I get the money, I'm dumping this hideous mansion, Vivian continued. Then a month in Switzerland to mourn my terrible loss. Then the Maldives, private island. You have to come, Mark. I know the perfect place where none of these winters can find us. She giggled. Yes, I'm in a crypt, but it's not that bad. Don't think I need to actually lie in the casket, just stay near it. No one can check anyway, and the Wi-Fi works. Charles insisted the family crypt have cutting-edge tech. Can you imagine? Wi-Fi in a tomb. Her laughter echoed off stone walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. I almost physically felt the irony condensing around me. Here I was, inside a high-tech casket, listening to a young widow plan to spend her dead husband's fortune, while my own wife was probably packing for her escape with the funeral director. Fate, apparently, had a twisted sense of humor. 8. My patience evaporated. Time to announce myself before the night progressed further. I began systematically pressuring the lid while trying different combinations on the emergency panel. This created a grinding sound that made Vivian stop mid-conversation. What was that? She asked sharply. What's happening, Vivian? The male voice came through her tablet. I don't know, her voice turned uncertain. Sounds coming from the casket. Which casket? Her caller asked anxiously. My casket, idiot, which other? She snapped. Something like grinding or knocking, think they mixed up the caskets. I increased my efforts, creating louder noises. The plan was simple, frighten her enough to open the crypt and call for help. Then I could escape and explain everything to Jonathan or the other heirs. Not ideal, but better than spending all night trapped. My God, Mark, it's moving, Vivian exclaimed. The casket, it's like, vibrating. What did that psycho plan? Calm down, Mark replied. Probably just settling, or the casket's automatic system. You said it was high-tech. Yes, but... Then something unexpected happened. The crypt lights flickered and died. Vivian's tablet also shut off. I heard her curse as the screen went dark. Mark, Mark, she screamed into the darkness. Complete blackness enveloped us. I heard only Vivian's heavy breathing and her heels clicking on stone as she stumbled around the crypt. The intercom, she muttered. Where's the damn intercom? Footsteps, then a button clicking. Hello, Jonathan, anyone? Real panic crept into her voice. The lights went out and something's wrong with Charles's casket. Silence. The intercom apparently died with the lights. No, 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 Vivian whimpered. This can't be happening. Please, God, help me. Am I going to die here? I heard her run to the crypt door and pound on it. Let me out. Something's wrong down here, please. Her screams echoed off the walls, but obviously no one heard. The crypt was too deep underground, the doors too thick. This is your doing, isn't it, Charles? She shrieked, apparently addressing the caskets. Even from the grave you're tormenting me. You knew the lights would fail. You planned all this. Her anger quickly morphed to fear as I continued my escape attempts, generating more noise. Oh God, she babbled. This can't be real. Ghosts don't exist. Charles is dead, dead. Meanwhile, I kept testing possible emergency codes. If this model used standard industrial safety protocols, there should be a universal override. In the military, we'd encountered similar systems. Usually something simple, easily remembered in crisis situations. I tried 911,911. Nothing. 999,999. No result. Then 112,112. The international emergency code repeated twice. Click, soft hum of hidden mechanisms. The lid began slowly rising. I'd found it. 9. Moving slowly and deliberately, I raised the casket lid higher. In the crypt's complete darkness, the sound and barely visible movement created maximum dramatic effect. Vivian froze, then released a strangled scream. What's happening? Her voice shook. The lid continued rising. Charles, she whispered, this is impossible. You're dead. You can't. Oh my God. In absolute darkness, she saw only the silhouette of a rising casket lid. To her, it must have looked like a horror movie scene, her dead husband rising from the grave for revenge. The lid fully opened. I sat up slowly, savoring the moment. Not that I wanted to terrify her to death, but some compensation for hours trapped seemed fair. Vivian unleashed a piercing scream that echoed off stone walls. She rushed to the crypt door and began pounding with doubled intensity. Help, let me out, he's alive. Charles is alive and coming for me. Please, someone save me. Her hysteria was so genuine I almost felt sorry. Almost. I swear, Charles, I didn't want you dead, she screamed between door strikes. It was all Mark. He said if we gradually reduced your medication, nobody would notice. I just wanted freedom. And money, yes, but mainly freedom. I couldn't stand your disgusting hands on my young, perfect body anymore. Unexpected confession. Apparently, the inconsolable widow wasn't just a calculating gold digger. She'd actively contributed to her husband's demise. The situation took an entirely new turn. Please, Charles, she sobbed. Don't take me with you. I'm still young. My whole life's ahead. I did try to please you, even though you knew you repulsed me. Time to end this farce. I climbed out of the casket, grimacing at stiff muscles, and pulled my keychain flashlight from my pocket. Old habit from service, never be caught in darkness without light. I'm not a ghost, I'm a living person, I announced clearly, switching on the flashlight. The beam cut through darkness, illuminating Vivian's face. Her expression morphed from terror through shock to confusion. Who are you? She pressed against the crypt wall. What are you doing in my husband's casket? Retreating further, she caught her heel on the floor's unevenness, loudly tearing her mourning dress at the seam. My flashlight revealed expensive lace lingerie beneath the somber outfit, clearly not intended for funerals. The old lecher had known how to pick them, at least. My name's Jack Turner, I replied, keeping my voice calm and steady. I work at the funeral home. There's been a mistake. Mistake, she stared, still disbelieving. What kind of mistake? Where's Charles? Your husband should be in the other casket, I explained, directing the beam to the second platform. I accidentally got locked in the Serenity 3000 demonstration model, the same one Daniel sold you for $500,000. That's impossible, she breathed. I arranged with Daniel, he promised. Daniel and my wife Melissa decided to make some extra cash, I said dryly. Creative method, I'll admit. Vivian stared as if I were still a ghost. Her eyes were wide, lips trembling. In her torn morning dress with disheveled hair and smeared mascara, she looked simultaneously comical and tragic, like a noir heroine who suddenly realized she'd wandered into a comedy. So, Charles is really dead? She finally asked. Far as I know, yes, I nodded. And judging by your conversation with Mark, you helped make that happen. Something about gradually reducing medication. She paled even further. You heard your entire conversation, I confirmed, including the confession. That's called murder, you know, even when spread over time. You can't prove anything, she said quickly, calculation replacing fear. Your word against mine. Who'll believe a man who climbed into a casket at someone else's funeral? Not like I climbed involuntarily, I clarified. But you're right, the situation's peculiar. I stepped toward her. She instinctively recoiled. But here's what's interesting, Mrs. Winters. You just confessed to murder, and we're locked here until morning. We have plenty of time to discuss the situation. 10. At that moment, a strange sound broke the crypt's silence, something like faint scratching. We both froze. What's that? Vivian whispered. The sound repeated, louder this time. It came from the second casket, the one presumably containing the real Charles. Now that's genuinely weird. That's supposed to be the real Charles, I exhaled, suddenly doubting my assumptions. He can't be alive, Vivian panicked. I checked myself, no pulse, the doctors confirmed death. We cautiously approached the casket. The scratching intensified. I aimed the flashlight at the lid. It was slightly ajar, apparently not properly closed, or something prevented the latch from engaging. Need to check, I said, though the thought of meeting an actual corpse didn't thrill me, despite having seen plenty of death. Are you insane? Vivian hissed. What if it really is him? At this point, I believe anything could happen tonight. You said he's definitely dead, I reminded her. Besides, if your husband somehow survived, shouldn't you be happy? She gave me a look of such pure hatred that I involuntarily admired her honesty. I carefully reached for the lid, intending to open it fully. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The lid jerked suddenly and something black and furry leaped out. Vivian screamed loud enough to ring my ears. I instinctively jumped back, dropping the flashlight. The beam went wild, illuminating stone walls, Vivian's terrified face, and an enormous black cat with glowing green eyes. It's just a cat, Vivian said incredulously when I retrieved the light. Looks like it, I replied, studying the animal. The cat was large, with gleaming black fur and an intelligent face. It sat unperturbed on the casket's edge, as if this were its rightful place, watching us with interest. How to get here? Vivian asked. Probably climbed into the casket before delivery to the crypt, I suggested. Cats like warm, hidden places. Or maybe it lives in the cemetery and entered through some ventilation shaft. As if understanding our conversation, the cat suddenly jumped down and darted to the crypt's far corner. Vivian and I instinctively followed. We should catch it, I said. Otherwise it'll run around all night keeping us awake. Sleep? Vivian looked at me like I was crazy. You really plan to sleep in a crypt? What choice do we have? I reasoned. The doors won't open until morning, unless we want to scream and pound all night hoping someone hears. No, she said quickly. If I leave the crypt before morning, I lose the inheritance. Exactly, I nodded. So better get comfortable, it'll be a long night. We began pursuing the cat, which clearly enjoyed the game. It jumped from platform to platform, slid under caskets, climbed wall projections. During the chase, Vivian and I repeatedly collided, ending up in compromising positions. Once, when we both dove for the cat under an empty platform, she practically landed in my lap. "Your hand is touching what I think it's touching, mister," she asked coldly. "Turner, Jack Turner. And no, that's the cat's tail," I replied. After several failed attempts, we finally cornered the cat between Charles's casket and the crypt wall. I reached to grab it, but at that moment, a familiar sound came from the casket, a vibrating phone. We both froze. "What's that?" I asked, shining the light on the casket. "Sounds like a phone," she replied unexpectedly calmly. "Charles insisted on being buried with his favorite smartphone, said he wanted to check stock reports even in the afterlife." I wasn't sure if she was joking or serious. "And it actually works?" I asked, nodding toward the casket still emitting vibration sounds. "Apparently, yes," Vivian shrugged. "Charles only used the best devices with maximum battery life. That phone can work a week without charging." The vibration continued. "We should check," I said decisively. "You want to open my husband's casket?" Vivian looked shocked. "Got better ideas for spending the next 10 hours in a locked crypt?" I asked. "Besides, you don't exactly respect your late husband. I heard your conversation, remember?" She pursed her lips but couldn't argue. "Fine," she reluctantly agreed. "Let's see who's calling Charles from the other side." We carefully approached the casket to investigate the sound source. The phone kept vibrating more insistently, as if the caller knew we were approaching. Chapter 3: The Night in the Crypt. They say you never really know what you're capable of until you're tested. I learned my limits in Afghanistan, Iraq, the steaming jungles of South America hunting cartel bosses who made horror movies look like Disney productions. But I never thought I'd test those limits inside a luxury casket, pretending to be a dead millionaire while surrounded by his vulture relatives. Turns out, there was one more test waiting. 1. "We begin the procession to the family crypt," the minister announced in his best funeral voice. "Please follow in proper order." My temporary steel cocoon swayed as 6 pallbearers hoisted me up. I felt the movement smooth and slow, matching the rhythm of their funeral march. Through my improvised peephole, I watched ceiling lights flicker past, then stone masonry replace them. The air grew colder, damper. We were descending underground. "Careful on the turn," Jonathan commanded. "The stairs are steep." The pallbearers navigated the casket down a spiral descent. I felt every turn, every step. Temperature continued dropping. Even through the casket walls, I sensed we'd entered a significantly colder space, typical underground crypt. Voices echoed off stone walls, creating ghostly reverberations. "Place the caskets on the platforms," ordered the same voice when we finally reached our destination. They gently lowered me onto something solid. Sounds indicated another casket being positioned nearby. The crypt filled with shuffling feet and hushed voices. "Ladies and gentlemen," the minister intoned, "we gather here to commit Charles Edmund Winters to his eternal rest. Family members may speak their final words." After a short pause, I heard heavy footsteps approach. "Father," Jonathan began, his usually commanding voice slightly fractured, "you left behind a complex legacy. You were demanding, often ruthless, but always just. You taught me that business has no room for sentiment, only results matter." He paused, wrestling with emotion. "When you turned 60 and the doctors gave you 1 year due to your heart, you told me you'd live 20 more years just to spite medical science. You lasted 18, almost kept your promise. So stubborn, even in this." His voice carried that strange cocktail of irritation and genuine respect. He stepped back, and I heard heels clicking on stone. "Charles," came the hoarse female voice, slightly blurred by alcohol. "You destroyed my life, you know that. Took my son, turned him against me. Eleanor's too emotional to raise a winter's heir. Remember those words in court. And now you're dead while I'm still here, still talking to you. Who won, Charles?" She laughed bitterly. Then came a sound suspiciously like a flask being tilted. "Know what's ironic? I still love you, you old bastard, despite everything." Alina retreated, replaced by measured, precise footsteps. "Charles," Margaret's voice was arctic and perfectly modulated. "You were an exceptional business partner and a terrible husband. You built an empire and shattered your family. You were a great man and a despicable human being." She paused. "Yet I'm grateful. You made me stronger. After our divorce, I built my own company and proved you wrong about me. Perhaps the only time the great Charles Winters miscalculated." Margaret withdrew, replaced by light, almost dancing steps. "Hi, Dad." Andrea's voice sounded unexpectedly warm, minus her usual sarcasm. "You know, everyone thinks I hate you. Probably because I'm the only one who always told you the truth to your face, told you what an asshole you were." Shocked gasps rippled through the crypt. "Oh, come on," Andrea snorted. He would have laughed. "Right, Dad, you always valued truth. That's why I loved you despite everything else. You were an unbearable, controlling, manipulative tyrant, but you never lied, and you always saw through everyone's bullshit." She paused, and I imagined her turning to face the others. "That's why I believe his last will has deeper meaning than it appears." She delivered that last sentence with obvious intent, and I could almost feel her gaze landing on Vivian. Then Andrea departed. Silence fell, broken only by someone's quiet sobbing, likely Vivian's theatrical tears. I used the moment to evaluate my position. So far, the ceremony was proceeding according to script. Somewhere nearby stood my wife, who betrayed me with the funeral director while participating in this macabre theater. I sensed Daniel's presence near the casket. He was nervously tapping the lid quietly, but I heard it. The situation was far from ideal. 2. "We conclude this service," the minister announced after everyone had spoken. "May Charles find eternal rest, and may his body return to the earth from whence it came." He offered a brief prayer that I barely heard over my own heartbeat. Time was running out. Soon they'd lock me in the crypt with Vivian for an entire night. "Everyone please return upstairs," Jonathan ordered. "Vivian will remain to fulfill our father's final wish." General commotion, shuffling feet, whispers, footsteps ascending stone stairs. When most had left, I heard Jonathan address Vivian. "Remember, the crypt doors will open in exactly 24 hours. The timer starts when we seal the doors. You must remain here all night or you forfeit everything." "I understand," Vivian replied softly. "There's an intercom just in case," Jonathan continued. "You can contact us in an emergency." "What constitutes an emergency?" Vivian asked in a trembling voice. "For instance, if I have a panic attack." "Then you'll receive assistance," Jonathan replied evenly, "and lose the inheritance. The will is crystal clear. Any breach of conditions means you receive the standard widow's portion, 7%, while the remainder is divided among us. Choose what matters more, your nerves or father's fortune." With that, he turned and left. I heard the heavy crypt door close with a resonant boom, then silence. Several seconds passed before Vivian moved. Then rapid footsteps, followed by a deep, relieved exhale. "Finally," she said in a completely different voice, confident and businesslike. "God, I'm exhausted from fake crying. All that sobbing makes my eyes burn." I heard fabric rustling, probably removing her mourning veil. Then the sound of a purse opening and glass clinking. "Time for a celebration," Vivian declared. "Just 12 more hours in this tomb and I'm richer by $300 million. Worth a drink." A bottle opened, liquid poured. The grieving widow had brought champagne to the crypt. Classy. Now entertainment, she said to herself. Long night ahead. I heard her retrieve something else from her bag, sounded electronic. The distinctive ping of a video call followed. Mark, it's me, Vivian said. Yes, already in the crypt, everything's going perfectly. These idiots actually locked me in. Can you believe it? She laughed. By the way, that guy from the funeral home did exactly as I asked. Swapped out my torture casket for the luxury model. Charles would be furious if he knew I'll spend the night in comfort instead of suffering on the wooden board he planned. A pause, presumably for the caller's response. Yes, for $500K. Pocket change compared to what I'll inherit tomorrow. Did you verify the exact amount? Another pause. 327 million. Seriously. The old man was even richer than I thought. I lay there, stunned by this woman's cynicism. She discussed her recently deceased husband like he was an ATM that finally hit jackpot. First thing once I get the money, I'm dumping this hideous mansion, Vivian continued. Then a month in Switzerland to mourn my devastating loss. Then the Maldives, private island. You have to come, Mark. I know a perfect spot where none of these winters will find us. She giggled. Yes, I'm in a crypt, but it's not that bad. Don't think I need to actually lie in the casket, just stay near it. Nobody can check anyway, and the Wi-Fi works. Charles insisted the family crypt have state-of-the-art tech. Can you imagine? Wi-Fi in a tomb. Her laughter echoed off stone walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. I could almost physically feel the irony condensing around me. Here I was, trapped inside a high-tech casket, listening to a young widow plan how to spend her dead husband's fortune, while my own wife was probably packing for her escape with the funeral director. Fate definitely had a sick sense of humor. 3. My patience evaporated. Time to announce myself before the night advanced further. I began systematically pressing against the lid while trying different combinations on the emergency panel. This created a grinding sound that made Vivian stop mid-conversation. What was that? She asked sharply. What's happening, Vivian? Came the male voice from her tablet. Don't know, her voice turned uncertain. Noises from the casket. Which casket? Her caller asked with concern. My casket, moron, what other one? She snapped. Something like scraping or banging. You think they mixed up the caskets. I increased my efforts, creating louder sounds. Plan was simple, frighten her enough to open the crypt and call for help. Then I could escape and explain everything to Jonathan or other heirs. Not ideal, but better than spending all night trapped. Oh my God, Mark, it's moving, Vivian exclaimed. The casket, it's like, vibrating. What did that psycho plan? Calm down, Mark replied. Probably just settling, or the casket's automatic systems. You said it was high-tech. Yes, but... At that moment, something unexpected happened. The crypt lights flickered and died. Vivian's tablet also shut down. I heard her swear as the screen went black. Mark, Mark, she screamed into darkness. Complete blackness enveloped us. I heard only Vivian's heavy breathing and her heels clicking on stone as she stumbled through the crypt. The intercom, she muttered. Where's that damn intercom? Footsteps, then the click of a button. Hello, Jonathan, anyone? Real panic invaded her voice. The lights went out, and something's happening with Charles's casket. Silence. The intercom had apparently died with the lights. No, 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 Vivian whimpered. This can't be happening. God help me. Am I going to die here? I heard her run to the crypt door and pound against it. Let me out. Something's wrong here, please. Her screams echoed off the walls, but obviously no one heard. The crypt was too deep, the doors too thick. This is all you're doing, isn't it, Charles? She shrieked, apparently addressing the caskets. Even from beyond the grave, you're torturing me. You knew the lights would fail. You orchestrated all this. Her anger rapidly morphed into fear as I continued my escape attempts, creating more noise. Oh God, she babbled. This can't be real, ghosts don't exist, Charles is dead, dead. Meanwhile, I continued testing possible emergency combinations. If this model used standard industrial safety protocols, there should be a universal override. In the military, we'd encountered similar systems. Usually something simple, easily remembered in emergencies. I tried 911,911. Nothing. 999,999. No result. Then 112,112. The international emergency code repeated twice. Click, soft hum of hidden mechanisms. The lid began slowly rising. 4. Moving deliberately slow, I pushed the casket lid higher. In the crypt's absolute darkness, the sound and barely visible movement created maximum dramatic impact. Vivian froze, then released a strangled cry. What's happening?" Her voice trembled. The lid continued its ascent. "Charles," she whispered, "this is impossible, you're dead, you can't, oh God." In complete darkness, she could only see the silhouette of a rising casket lid. For her, it must have looked like a horror movie come to life, her dead husband rising from the grave for vengeance. The lid opened fully. I sat up slowly, savoring the moment. Not that I wanted to scare her to death, but some payback for my hours of imprisonment seemed fair. Vivian unleashed a scream that could have woken the legitimately dead. She bolted to the crypt door and began hammering with renewed desperation. "Help, let me out, he's alive. Charles is alive and wants me. Please, anybody, save me." Her hysteria was so genuine I almost felt guilty. Almost. "I swear, Charles, I didn't want you dead," she screamed between blows. "It was all Mark. He said if we gradually reduced your meds, nobody would notice. I just wanted freedom. And money, yes, but mostly freedom. I couldn't endure your disgusting old man hands on my young, beautiful body anymore." That was an unexpected confession. Turns out the grieving widow wasn't just a calculating gold digger. She'd actively helped her husband shuffle off this mortal coil. The situation took on entirely new dimensions. "Please, Charles," she sobbed. "Don't take me with you. I'm still so young. I have my whole life ahead. I did honestly try to please you, even though you knew I found you repulsive." Time to end this charade. I climbed out of the casket, wincing at stiff muscles, and pulled out my pocket flashlight. Old habit from service, never be caught in the dark without a light source. 5. "I'm not a ghost, I'm a living person," I announced clearly, switching on the flashlight. The beam sliced through darkness, illuminating Vivian's face. Her expression morphed from terror through shock to confusion. Who are you?" She pressed against the crypt wall. "What are you doing in my husband's casket?" Backing away further, she caught her heel on uneven flooring and audibly ripped her morning dress at the seam. My flashlight revealed expensive lace lingerie beneath the somber outfit, clearly not funeral-appropriate attire. The old lecher had good taste, at least. "My name's Jack Turner," I replied, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I work at the funeral home. There's been a mistake." "Mistake?" She stared at me, still disbelieving. "What kind of mistake? Where's Charles?" "Your husband should be in the other casket," I explained, directing the beam toward the neighboring platform. "I accidentally got locked in the Serenity 3000 demonstration model, the same one Daniel sold you for $500,000. "That's impossible," she breathed. "I arranged with Daniel," he promised. "Daniel and my wife Melissa decided to make some extra cash," I said dryly. "Rather creative method, I'll admit." Vivian stared at me like I was still a ghost. Her eyes were wide, lips trembling. In her torn morning dress with disheveled hair and smeared mascara, she looked simultaneously comic and tragic, like a film noir heroine who suddenly realized she'd wandered into a sitcom. "So, Charles is really dead?" she finally asked. "As far as I know, yes," I nodded. "And based on your conversation with Mark, you helped arrange that. Something about gradually reducing medication." She paled even further. You heard your entire conversation, I confirmed, including the confession. That's murder, you know, even when it's released. You can't prove anything, she said quickly, calculation replacing fear. Your word against mine. Who'll believe a man who crawled into a casket at someone else's funeral? Not that I crawled involuntarily, I clarified. But you're right, it's a peculiar situation. I took a step toward her, and she instinctively recoiled. But here's what's interesting, Mrs. Winters. You just confessed to murder, and we're locked here until morning. We have plenty of time to discuss the situation. Zix. At that moment, a strange sound broke the crypt's silence, something like faint scratching. We both froze. What's that? Vivian whispered. The sound repeated, louder this time. It came from the second casket, the one presumably containing the real Charles. Well, that's genuinely odd. That should be the real Charles, I exhaled, suddenly doubting my assumptions. He can't be alive, Vivian panicked. I checked myself, no pulse, the doctors confirmed death. We cautiously approached the casket. The scratching intensified. I aimed the flashlight at the lid. It was slightly ajar, apparently not properly closed, or something prevented the latch from engaging. Need to check, I said, though meeting an actual corpse face to face wasn't appealing, even after all the death I'd witnessed. Are you insane? Vivian hissed. What if it really is him? I think anything's possible tonight. You said he's definitely dead, I reminded her. Besides, if your husband somehow survived, shouldn't you be thrilled? She gave me a look of such pure hatred that I involuntarily admired her honesty. I carefully reached for the lid, intending to open it fully. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The lid jerked suddenly, and something black and furry launched out. Vivian screamed loud enough to wake the actual dead. I instinctively jumped back, dropping the flashlight. The beam went wild across the crypt, illuminating stone walls, Vivian's terrified face, and an enormous black cat with glowing green eyes. It's just a cat, Vivian said incredulously when I recovered the light. Appears so, I replied, studying the animal. The cat was large, with lustrous black fur and an intelligent face. It sat unperturbed on the casket's edge, like this was its natural throne, observing us with interest. How to get here? Vivian asked. Probably climbed in the casket before they delivered it to the crypt, I theorized. Cats like warm, secluded spots, or maybe it lives in the cemetery and entered through some ventilation shaft. As if understanding our discussion, the cat suddenly jumped down and dashed to the crypt's far corner. Vivian and I instinctively pursued. We should catch it, I said. Otherwise it'll run around all night keeping us awake. Sleep. Vivian looked at me like I'd suggested recreational lobotomies. You actually plan to sleep in a crypt. What choice do we have? I reasoned. The doors won't open until morning, unless we want to scream and pound all night hoping someone hears. No, she said quickly. If I leave before morning, I lose the inheritance. Exactly, I nodded. So might as well get comfortable, long night ahead. We began chasing the animal, which clearly enjoyed our clumsy pursuit. The cat jumped platform to platform, slid under caskets, scaled wall protrusions. During the chase, Vivian and I repeatedly collided, ending up in awkward positions. Once, when we both dove for the cat under an empty platform, she practically landed in my lap. Is your hand on what I think it's on, mister? She asked icily. Turner, Jack Turner. And no, that's the cat's tail, I replied. After several failed attempts, we finally cornered the cat between Charles's casket and the crypt wall. I reached to grab it, but at that moment, a familiar sound emanated from the casket, a vibrating phone. We both froze. What's that? I asked, shining the light on the casket. Sounds like a phone, she replied, unexpectedly calm. Charles insisted on being buried with his favorite smartphone. said he wanted to check stock reports even in the afterlife. I couldn't tell if she was joking or serious. And it actually works, I asked, nodding toward the still vibrating casket. Apparently, Vivian shrugged. Charles only used top-tier devices with extended battery life. That phone can run a week without charging. The vibration persisted. We should check, I said decisively. You want to open my husband's casket? Vivian looked shocked. Got better ideas for the next 10 hours locked in a crypt? I asked. Besides, you're not exactly reverent toward your late husband. I heard your conversation, remember? She pursed her lips but couldn't argue. Fine, she reluctantly agreed. Let's see who's calling Charles from beyond. We carefully approached the casket to investigate the sound source. The phone kept vibrating more insistently, as if the caller knew we were getting closer. Chapter 4, Charles's Final. Life is full of irony, especially mine. Here I stand in a family crypt beside a millionaire's corpse, trying to catch a cat while investigating a vibrating smartphone in said corpse's hands. All this in the company of a half-dressed young widow who apparently helped her husband into this casket. As endings go, this beat anything Hollywood could imagine. 1. The phone's vibration didn't stop. The sound bounced off the crypt walls, creating an illusion that the entire room was vibrating. The cat, apparently deciding we weren't sufficiently distracted, used the moment to vanish again into the shadows. Opening it, I looked at Vivian. She nodded, biting her lip. I carefully lifted the casket lid. It yielded easily. My flashlight beam revealed Charles Winter's face. Even in death, he looked commanding and slightly arrogant. Gray hair perfectly styled, suit seemingly just pressed. In his folded hands rested a latest model smartphone. The screen glowed, casting eerie blue light on the corpse's face. That's creepy, I muttered. Charles always loved making an impression, Vivian replied, peering cautiously into the casket. Even after death. I noticed her voice carried no fear or revulsion, just mild annoyance, as if her husband's eccentricities had long become routine. The phone continued vibrating. The screen flashed a notification. Live stream ready to launch. Auto start in 10 seconds. What live stream? I frowned. Vivian hesitantly reached for the phone from the dead man's hands. No idea, but knowing Charles. At that moment, I noticed something peculiar on the crypt walls. My flashlight beam reflected off a small glass lens expertly embedded between stones. I swept the light another direction. There was another. What the hell, I exclaimed, are those cameras? I circled the room, illuminating every corner. Cameras were everywhere, in walls, ceiling, even integrated into decorative casket elements. I should have guessed, Vivian sighed, sinking onto a stone bench. Charles always loved observing people under stress, said it was the only way to see their true nature. This is just like him. Plus, he needed some way to verify I'd fulfill the requirement, spend the night with him as the will demands. Her words contained twisted logic, fitting for the deceased millionaire. The phone emitted a melodic tone, and a new message appeared on screen. Vivian started. There's some file and a note. She opened the Notes app. I moved closer to read over her shoulder. Dear Vivian, if you're reading this, my experiment has already begun. Welcome to the reality show Night with a Millionaire, my posthumous broadcast for select friends and business partners. You always said I should trust people more, that I was too suspicious. Well, here's my final test. Prove you loved me, not my money. Spend this night with dignity, as befits a loving widow. P.S. Don't try to escape. It's part of my final wish, and you'll lose everything. With love or without, Charles. Vivian and I exchanged glances. The situation was becoming increasingly surreal. Your husband was a unique individual, I observed. You have no idea, she muttered, continuing to examine the phone. Oh God, there's another note hidden in the casket lining. She extracted a small envelope, almost invisible beneath the silk upholstery. Inside was a keycard and another note. This key opens a secret door in the northeast corner. Behind it, a room with emergency oxygen, food, water, and communication equipment. If you're truly fine, ignore it. If you genuinely need rescue, use it. But remember, any breach of will conditions is tracked and recorded. Vivian smiled grimly. Even from beyond, he continues his manipulations, testing if I'll resist temptation. I looked at the phone's timer, 321. Stream starting, I announced. Looks like the show begins whether we want it or not. 2. The phone screen came alive, splitting into multiple sections. The center displayed a live feed from the crypt Vivian and me, illuminated by my flashlight. In the upper corner, a viewer counter blinked. 5312-7256. They can all see us. Right now, panic crept into Vivian's voice. I quickly surveyed the crypt again, searching for blind spots. Futile. Cameras everywhere, I confirmed. Night vision, wide-angle lenses. Looks like the old man really thought of everything. A viewer list opened on screen. I whistled, seeing the names. Is that the entire Forbes list? I couldn't believe my eyes. Names of major entrepreneurs, Hollywood producers, even some politicians and minor royalty scrolled through the connected viewers list. Charles's social circle, Vivian explained. He hosted exclusive parties for them. They'd bet on various situation outcomes, usually involving unsuspecting participants. Sounds like a sick hobby, I noted. For them it's just entertainment, Vivian shrugged. When you have everything, you start seeking unconventional adrenaline sources. I continued scanning the viewer list when my gaze snagged on an unexpected name. Melissa Turner. My wife, I couldn't believe it. How'd she get access? I quickly clicked the name, and the screen split again, showing not just us but an additional window displaying a luxury hotel room. There, on a king bed with champagne and fruit, sat Melissa and Daniel, staring intently at their screen. Based on their disheveled appearance and tousled hair, they just finished doing what lovers typically do in hotel rooms. Oh, was all Vivian managed, delicately looking away. I conversely couldn't stop watching. 18 years of marriage, 18 years of risking my life in hot zones, sending home most of my paycheck, dreaming of quiet family life after retirement. And there she was with another man, watching entertainment from a crypt where her husband was trapped in a casket. She looks happy, I observed, surprised by my own calm. Vivian looked at me doubtfully. You okay? Surprisingly, yes, I replied. Guess time spent in a casket helps reprioritize. The viewer count kept climbing. 489612-843. Show's getting popular, Vivian noted. What do we do? I looked around. We were locked in a crypt until morning. Dozens of cameras filmed us. Hundreds of the world's wealthiest people watched, probably betting on our behavior. My wife was cheating with the funeral director. A black cat periodically leaped from shadows, creating an old horror movie atmosphere. The situation was so absurd, I had only one logical option. I suggest we give them a show, I said, unexpectedly smiling. 3. Before we could decide what kind of show to provide our invisible audience, the phone activated a chat function. Messages began appearing rapidly. Jonathan Winters, what's happening? Who's this man with Vivian? Margaret W. I knew she couldn't last an hour without male company. Eleanor, can someone explain what's going on? Why is there a stranger in the crypt? And where's my bottle? Andrea Winters, Dad, you're a genius. Even from beyond you arranged the perfect test. Always knew you wouldn't leave things to chance. These messages appeared in real time. Obviously, the entire Winters family was monitoring the crypt proceedings. Amazing, Vivian muttered. They won't even try calling or checking if I'm okay, just sitting there commenting like it's reality TV. Essentially, it is reality TV, I pointed out, organized by your late husband. At that moment, the camera showing Melissa and Daniel drew my attention again. They were staring intently at the screen. "Look, it's Jack," Melissa exclaimed, pointing. "How'd he get there?" Her voice came clearly through the phone speaker. Apparently, she didn't realize they were also being filmed and broadcast. "No idea," Daniel replied nervously, visibly paling even in the room's dim light. "But this could ruin our whole plan." "Who cares?" Melissa dismissed with a wave. "Now I have the perfect divorce excuse. My husband's a pathetic loser stuck in a casket just like in his life. He never understood my needs." I froze hearing these words. It's one thing to suspect your wife's unhappy, quite another to hear her openly discussing it with her lover, unaware you're listening. Robert De Niro, now that's a twist, classic double betrayal. Tech billionaire, betting 50K the husband punches the funeral director. Sir Rich Bankington, I'll take that bet and raise to 100K the military guy stays cool. These special ops types know emotional control. The viewers treated our situation as high-stakes entertainment. Vivian silently watched me, awaiting reaction. I felt a strange chill inside. Not rage or pain, rather, final understanding. Like the last puzzle piece clicking into place, completing the picture. "You know," I finally said, "after hours in a casket, you start seeing things differently." "She doesn't deserve you," Vivian said quietly. "And you don't deserve constant surveillance from your dead husband," I countered. We looked at each other in the crypt's semi-darkness, lit only by the phone screen and my flashlight. Two people betrayed by those closest to them. Two people thrown together by circumstance in the strangest place, an eccentric millionaire's family crypt. The chat continued filling with comments and bets. Andrea Winters, "Melissa and Daniel don't know they're being filmed too. Brilliant dad." Venture capitalist, "200K that nobody leaves before morning. Well, conditions will be met." Margaret W., "I'll bet my Fabergé collection that Vivian still loses the inheritance. This dalliance with the military man clearly violates Charles's final wishes." Vivian read the last message and smirked. "The will only says I must spend the night in the crypt beside Charles. Nothing about being alone or miserable." "That's true," I noted. "Legally, you're still fulfilling the conditions." "Unless we use the emergency exit," she nodded at the keycard. We both understood we stood at a crossroads. We could try escaping and probably lose the inheritance, or stay and turn this night into something unexpected for all observers. The decision came surprisingly easily. 4. Instead of being upset by Melissa's words, I felt strange relief. Like a heavy body armor I'd worn for years was finally lifted from my shoulders. "You know she's right," I said, unexpectedly smiling. "I really am stuck and not just in this casket." Vivian looked at me with confusion. "You're not angry." 18 years I chased terrorists worldwide," I replied, shaking my head, "while the real snake lived in my own house all along. Funny, right?" And suddenly I was overtaken by uncontrollable laughter. Not bitter or hysterical, just genuine laughter from someone recognizing life's absurdity. Jonathan Winters, "Is he laughing?" Lady Appleton, "Psychological breakdown, classic stress response." But it wasn't a breakdown, it was liberation. I looked directly into the nearest camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special episode of How I Met Your Tomb." Tonight's program: an ex-special ops soldier, a cheating wife, and a stunning millionaire's widow who doesn't seem particularly grief-stricken. Vivian stared at me wide-eyed for a second, then surprisingly joined the game. Plus special guest, a cat that made us believe in ghosts. She pointed at the black cat, which chose that exact moment to emerge from shadows and elegantly leap onto an empty platform. Queen Monaco, are they really doing this, turning the situation into comedy? Tech Guru, this is genius. Reminds me of a startup we launched in '08. When everything goes wrong, change the plan. Andrea Winters, this is why I was always Daddy's favorite. I told you something like this would happen. The viewer count grew exponentially. A message appeared on screen. Due to unprecedented broadcast popularity, access is now open to gold and platinum tier users. Contact your financial advisor for status upgrade. Your husband monetized his own funeral. I raised an eyebrow. He wouldn't miss such an opportunity, Vivian shrugged. Charles always said death was just another business transaction. We exchanged glances and simultaneously burst out laughing. The situation was so absurd, laughter was the only option. So, I continued, addressing the cameras. What's our program for tonight? Maybe share stories. I could tell about the time I spent 3 days in a Kabul sewer ambush, hunting a Taliban field commander. Shot him right in the ass when he finally came to relieve himself. Trust me, compared to that, a night in a crypt is a 5-star hotel. And I could tell about trying to impress Charles's parents at our first family dinner, Vivian picked up, and accidentally spilling sauce on his mother's lap, tomato sauce. And so, step by step, we began transforming our forced imprisonment into an impromptu comedy show. Because sometimes laughter is the only weapon against life's absurdity. 5. The next hours flew by unnoticed. Vivian and I, inspired by increasingly enthusiastic comments, turned the night in the crypt into genuine entertainment. I told stories from my military years, carefully avoiding classified information, but adding enough detail to make them compelling. Vivian shared insider details about Silver Ridge elite life gossip, scandals, and the ultra-wealthy's strange habits. We staged an impromptu competition telling the most ridiculous stories about our exes, me about Melissa's quirks, Vivian about Charles's eccentricities. He insisted I always keep my right hand at heart level during business dinners, she laughed. Said it demonstrated loyalty and repelled corporate spies. Really, he was just testing if I'd follow his absurd demands. Melissa once made me turn back halfway to the airport when I was leaving for a mission, I countered, because she dreamed I forgot to kiss her favorite teddy bear for luck. And you know what? I went back, 50 miles, to kiss a damn toy. The chat exploded with comments and emojis. Duchesse de Noir, this is better than the last season of Game of Thrones. Mega Yachtsman, if they don't get their own show after this, I'll personally fund it. Andrea Winters, Vivian, you have to tell them about the Japanese delegation and Dad's figurine collection. We also answered viewer questions, which became increasingly frank as hours passed. Chic Petrodollar, Jack, have you really killed people with bare hands? I'm afraid that's classified, I replied with a smile. But I'll say this, the human body is surprisingly fragile if you know the right pressure points. Lady Private Banking, Vivian, is it true Charles slept in an oxygen chamber to extend his life? True, she nodded. And that wasn't his strangest longevity method. There were also weekly placental injections from alpine goats and monthly blood transfusions from 20-year-old athletes. Somewhere midnight, Vivian produced champagne and 2 plastic cups from her purse. To new beginnings, she said, offering me a cup. And unexpected encounters, I added, clinking with her. To our surprise, the black cat we'd failed to catch became the show's real star. It periodically appeared on camera, struck regal poses on platforms, and finally marked Charles's casket lid, triggering a common avalanche. Marketorical, that cat is Charles reincarnated, betting $1 million. As the night progressed, our show's tone shifted. From surface jokes we moved to deeper themes. I discovered I could speak about real feelings for the first time in years, how war changed me, the difficulties of returning to civilian life, the growing chasm between Melissa and me. I thought I was protecting them all, my country, my family, I said to the camera, but ultimately couldn't even protect my marriage. Vivian also became more candid. I married Charles for money, that's true, she admitted. But over time, I genuinely grew attached. He was an unbearable tyrant, but at least an honest tyrant. Never hid his expectations from marriage, never played false, never pretended to be someone else. Margaret W. Can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm starting to believe her. By dawn, our impromptu show had gone viral. Night in the Crypt topped all social media trends. Charles's tech team had apparently expanded the broadcast beyond the closed circle. Now millions watched us. You know, Vivian said, as the first sunbeams penetrated the crypt's tiny ventilation openings. This night turned out nothing like I expected. Life rarely meets our expectations, I replied. That's its charm. 6. At exactly 9 a.m., we heard the lock mechanism engage. The heavy crypt door slowly opened, admitting bright light and fresh air. In the doorway stood Jonathan Winters, wearing an impeccable suit. Behind him crowded other family members and, to our surprise, numerous reporters with cameras and microphones. Good morning, Jonathan said formally, though his eyes showed surprise. I hope the night was comfortable. I stood, helping Vivian up. We both looked rumpled but maintained dignity. Quite educational, Vivian replied. Your father always knew how to organize an unforgettable event. We exited the crypt, squinting in bright sunlight. Camera flashes, voice babble, reporters shouting questions. After the crypt's silence, it seemed like pure chaos. Mr. Turner, how did you end up in the crypt? Mrs. Winters, is it true you turned your husband's final wish into a reality show? What do you say about Melissa Turner's comments about your marriage? Jonathan raised his hand, demanding silence. Please, no questions until we've clarified the will situation, he announced loudly. Then turned to Vivian. I watched the entire broadcast, beginning to end, and I must say you honestly fulfilled our father's will condition. Surprised whispers rippled through the crowd. Father said you must spend the night beside him in the crypt, Jonathan continued. He didn't specify you had to be alone or miserable. In fact, I suspect everything went exactly as he planned. What do you mean? Vivian asked. Andrea pushed forward, grinning broadly. He wanted you to show your true self, she said. And you did. You stayed in the crypt despite the circumstances. You didn't flee. And you were honest for the first time since I've known you. Margaret, standing nearby, reluctantly nodded. Much as I hate to admit it, Charles always had a gift for revealing people's true nature, and it seems he wasn't wrong about you. At that moment, Daniel and Melissa desperately pushed through the crowd. Seeing me, they froze like deer in headlights. Jack, Melissa exclaimed, this isn't what you think. I calmly looked at the woman I'd lived with for nearly 2 decades. You know, Melissa, for the first time in a long while, I know exactly what I think, and it's an amazingly liberating feeling. Daniel tried to slip away unnoticed, but was immediately surrounded by reporters demanding comments about his unflattering on-air statements. Epilogue. A week flew by like a single moment. Night in the Crypt became a cultural phenomenon. Vivian and I were invited to every major talk show. Offers for books, films, and of course, our own reality show poured in from all directions. Finally, we found ourselves in the country's most popular evening show studio. The host, known for his sharp wit, asked the question interesting everyone. So what's next? What will the heroes of Night in the Crypt do now? I smiled, feeling more relaxed than in recent years. I've always wanted to open a survival school. Extreme situations, unconventional solutions, that's what I really understand. Now I have a story that'll attract students. Vivian, sitting beside me, added. And I'll use part of the inheritance to create a reality show about life behind the wealth facade, about what really happens behind closed doors of elite mansions and at exclusive parties. I think Charles would approve. He always valued truth, even when it was uncomfortable. Especially when it was uncomfortable, I clarified, and we exchanged understanding smiles. The camera pulled back, showing the studio in wider frame. In the far corner, you could spot Melissa and Daniel, having lost their reputations after the scandal. Now they worked grunt jobs in the television industry, fetching coffee for crew members, setting up lighting, running petty errands. And on the studio wall, among other celebrity photos, hung a new portrait Charles Winters with a barely noticeable smirk, as if he was watching everything happening and remained satisfied with his final experiment's outcome. Life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes it leads us to dead ends or even into caskets. But it's precisely in such moments we discover who we really are. And sometimes we find new beginnings in the most unexpected places, even in an eccentric millionaire's family crypt. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please support the author with a like, subscribe to the Purple Heart Stories channel, and share your emotions in the comments. Thank you.